I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. Would you all please rise for the, sorry, this is a regular council meeting. All please rise for the invocation.
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Thank you. So we have an addendum this evening relative to, first of all, the appointment under new business to the Affordable Housing Committee. There was a bit of a mix-up there, so there's been some change to that. And also added to the consent agenda with respect to correspondence is an item for a request by the 484 Frontier Wing of the Royal Canadian Air Force Association to permit it to fly its flag during the Battle of Britain Week, September 10th to 16th. And we've got a couple of responses to inquiries from staff members to inquiries raised by members of council previously. Just a few announcements, primarily and firstly with respect to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference that councillors Butler, Passero, and I and our CAO Tom Cook had attended in Ottawa last week. Our delegation was able to meet with Sylvia Jones, the Minister of Tourism, and Jim Wilson, the Minister of Economic Growth, and impressed upon them the importance of several projects where public investment would drive or attract private investment. Those were the Niagara Parks Marina Resort Project, which Infrastructure Ontario is now involved in. The town and the region are also part of that ongoing process, meetings and deliberations. Second item was the environmental remediation and creation of a park at the coal docks as part of Fort Erie's growing park system, including waterfront parks. Third item was the return of the slots to the Fort Erie racetrack, which would enhance further opportunities for development of the larger footprint of that site. Fourth was the expansion of the urban boundaries to permit additional industrial or employment lands to be created in Fort Erie, which would provide much needed marketable lands for manufacturing concerns. And fifth, the installation of high-speed internet capability throughout the town of Fort Erie to facilitate efficiency and the growth of existing businesses and to attract new digitally dependent businesses to Fort Erie. We also secured from Minister Wilson a commitment to meet with us in Toronto to further discuss some of those items, as well as another important project which we will be presenting. I also had an opportunity to sit in on regional Niagara delegations along with Councillor Annunziata. We met with John Yakubuski, the Minister of Transportation, and Steve Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, to advocate for the development of the Gateway Economic Corridor along the Queen Elizabeth Highway between Niagara Falls and Fort Erie, which would also entail the expansion of urban boundaries for employment lands and an extension of water and wastewater services to those areas. Secondly, forward movement on the Niagara GTA trade corridor that would divert transport traffic from the QEW to a new southerly highway, with the next step being the connection of the section between Highway 140 and the Queen Elizabeth Highway in Fort Erie. We also talked about the benefits of the province promoting residents to obtain enhanced driver's licenses, which would facilitate crossing the border between US and Canada without the need for a passport, and also affordable housing and the role that the province can play with respect to that initiative. Various of us, members of council, had an opportunity to participate in some workshops relative to a variety of topics, and we also attended the Cabinet Ministers Forum, where the Cabinet Ministers took answers from the audience and tried to flesh out some of the things that the provincial government will be doing in the future. This is a very valuable conference that provides a great deal of information to assist municipalities to serve residents better in a constantly changing world. Probably one of the largest changes will be the pending cannabis legislation, which will legalize cannabis and the sales of cannabis products in Ontario. and it will have large implications for municipalities, both from a cost perspective in terms of being able to enforce our bylaws relative to whatever the regulations are that the province passes down, and the need for human resources. So that's a work in progress, and we'll see how that plays out. The second item announcement relates to on Sunday, August the 19th, the Cuban Consul General, Tanya Lopez Larroque, attended the annual picnic of the Canadian-Cuban Friendship Association Niagara chapter, which was held at the Old Fort. The Consul General has been in Fort Erie previously, and she'll be visiting again one of our local manufacturers, Greenstone Structural Solutions, later this year to view its operation and the prefabricated walls that it constructs for both residential and business purposes, which may very well have an application in Cuba. Wanted to talk just very briefly about Bay Beach. We continue to have concerns by telephone and emails expressed to the town with respect to the construction that's taking place there, alcohol on the beach, parking and improper conduct of individuals visiting the beach. We take all of these concerns very seriously, and we have taken steps to alleviate the issues. For example, we've hired off-duty Niagara Regional Police officers to be at the beach to control and monitor conduct, issue fines for alcohol offenses. We've posted signs at the beach entrance notifying visitors that certain things are prohibited, alcohol, tents, fires on the beach. We have added a full-time bylaw enforcement officer who has been most of the summer issuing parking tickets in and around Bay Beach, and we did add additional portable toilets earlier this summer. We understand the inconvenience and the aggravation experienced by residents in the vicinity of the beach and agree that it has been unacceptable. We appreciate the patience of the residents and can assure them that the town will continue to strengthen enforcement of the beach rules and parking regulations, and we will be starting the process to develop long-term strategies for beach management, and that will address parking, perhaps numbers of people on the beach, whether there should be a fee for the beach, and the consensus seems to be that there should be, enforcing the prohibition of alcohol, tents, and barbecues on the beach, and generally ensuring that a day at the beach is enjoyable for everyone, not just the visitors, but also the people who live in the neighborhood. It's also asked to make an announcement by the Fort Erie Fire Department. They're participating this year in International Overdose Awareness Day, and that is a global event which aims to raise awareness of overdose and reduce the stigma of drug-related deaths. It also acknowledges the grief felt by families and friends remembering those who have met with death or permanent injury as a result of drug overdose. And Overdose Day spreads the message that the tragedy of overdose death is preventable. There will be an overdose awareness gathering and vigil this Wednesday, August the 29th at 6:30 p.m. at the Fort Erie Central Fire Station on Central Avenue, for those of you who can attend. And finally, just a reminder that this is the last week of the school summer break. Kids are back to school starting the day after Labor Day, which is a week from Tuesday, and want to urge and encourage all motorists to keep an eye out for children, not just in the school zones, but throughout the town, because they will be out and about in great numbers. So that takes care of the announcements. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. 105-2018 under number 13, consideration of bylaws, and 106-2018 as both of those are by one individual or one company that I deal with.
Are there any other disclosures? Councillor Passero.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a disclosure regarding 8A delegations concerning our only delegation tonight. I am an immediate past president and still active member of the Fort Erie Lions Club, so I will vacate my seat during that delegation.
You don't have to vacate your seat. You can stay in the room because it's an open public.
No, I'll go down there. That's fine.
Oh, you're going to join your club. That's good too.
Close by.
Okay. Any others? Madam Clerk, I have a pecuniary interest with respect to bylaw 112 for 2018, which relates to Centurion Construction insofar as I have a family member involved in a matter with Centurion at the present time. So we have some notices of upcoming public meetings. On September the 4th, 2018, there will be a rezoning bylaw amendment public meeting with respect to 2631 Windmill Point Lane West. That will be here in the council chamber at 6 p.m. And the information report with respect to that public meeting will be available on our website on August the 29th, 2018. Second public meeting announcement is with respect to a zoning bylaw amendment at 3732 Rebstock Road. Again, Tuesday, September the 4th at 6 p.m. here at the Town Hall in the council chambers. And again, the information report will be available Wednesday, August 29th. Third public information meeting notice is with respect to a town-initiated housekeeping amendment. And the public meeting is Wednesday, September the 5th, 2018. That will be a public information meeting. It's at the Town Hall in the atrium. On September the 17th, there is a town-initiated zoning bylaw housekeeping amendment. That will be held at 6 p.m. in the Town Hall Council chambers during our council meeting. And the information report with respect to that will be available Wednesday, September the 12th. That takes care of notices of public meetings. That takes us to the regional councilors' report. Good evening, Councilor Nunziata.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council, members in the gallery. I'll try to be as brief as possible, and I want to start with any of the construction projects that will be impacting our residents here in the town of Fort Erie. So just as an update, demolition has begun at the County Fair Mall. It's an internal demolition and it's an abatement. Notices have been given out to the affected business and property owners in the area. Although there is minimal noise and minimal disruption, we'll save the noise and the disruption for the wrecking ball, which will be coming shortly after. But for now, it's internal abatement, and just to keep council apprised of what's going on at the County Fair Mall. As well, a couple of notices will be coming out in the local newspapers with respect to temporary road closures. So there will be a road closure for Regional Road, Phipps Street, for a rehabilitation project on weekdays, Thursday, August 30th, 2008, until Wednesday, September 5th, 2018, excluding Monday, September 3rd, 2018, Labor Day. Now again, notices will be coming out in the newspaper. They'll be posted on the town and the regional website, and any residents that require any further information, by all means, check those sources out. And again, it will be closed to through traffic on a block-by-block basis from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., weather permitting. Another temporary road closure is Regional Road 1, which is Dominion Road between Centralia and Windmill Point. A full road closure is necessary for the construction of the new regional trunk water main. So again, apologies for the inconvenience that the Dominion Road project has caused, but we're at the finish line. We're getting close to the end, and I just want to extend my appreciation for the impact on motorists that the construction has had. We did receive another notice from Emterra with respect to some missed waste and garbage collections. It doesn't affect Fort Erie, but overall, I think the performance of Emterra has been very well documented. So again, moving forward, we want to make sure that the level of service is meeting their obligations, and it's a level of service that our residents have come to expect. So again, I did want to make special note, though, it is related to resources and employment staffing issues. So I want to make this note that Emterra is actively recruiting DZ drivers and loaders. So there is a job fair at the Welland Job Gym on September 5th from 3 to 7 p.m., or you can apply online at emterra.ca/careers. So again, they do experience challenges with respect to their fleet, with respect to human resources, with respect to staffing issues. We are in full protocol that makes sure that we're holding Emterra's feet to the fire, making sure that they're fulfilling their end of the obligation moving forward. But again, That's something for council to discuss moving forward as far as the level of service that we've received from Emterra. I thought your comments, Your Worship, with respect to AMO were very succinct and to the point. We had some great delegations with respect to our minister partners. I think if I had to encapsulate an overall theme, it would be about jobs and job creation, employment opportunities, employment lands, and easing bureaucracy, red tape, and the flow of traffic and goods across not only the Peace Bridge, but across the highway corridor. So again, opportunities exist for Fort Erie in our strategic geographic location. We just have to capitalize on them, and certainly we need a sympathetic ear at the province. I thought the meetings that we attended were very well received. Moving forward, I'm looking forward to having our minister colleagues come down to Niagara, do some ground truthing for themselves, get some boots on the ground so they can see for themselves the incredible potential that we have here in Fort Erie. So I'm excited about that as well. That concludes my updates, Your Worship, and I'll open up to question or comments from council.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. And if all of the ministers who were invited come to Fort Erie, we'll have to get a bus. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Annunziata, recently some transit shelters were put up in Fort Erie. Don't they look great?
Yeah, they look great. I love them.
So I noticed when I was down in the downtown core by Central and Jarvis Street, the newly placed one, that people were getting off the bus and they were throwing their garbage on the ground, which is not a great thing. And so I did go and pick some up. But at the same point, can the region put up those cans for recycling and garbage receptacles?
Yeah, so through you, Your Worship, so I do understand that the BIA does have an agreement with Emterra to pick up the waste. I know we've had some challenges. I know myself and Councillor McDermott have been corresponding back and forth, trying to get a remedy to make sure that any overflowing garbage, any trash that's on the street, it does have an impact on the visual appearance of the street, and we do not want that. We want zero tolerance. So we're going to be working with our partners at Emterra and certainly at the region to make sure that we address those concerns as they happen. And I will bring that concern forward. If we could touch base with our BAA partners, if there's a better, more ideal location where they would want some of those trash receptacles, by all means, we're going to listen, and we're going to try to accommodate the business district and the patrons that visit the Bridgebrook area. So I'll bring that forward. Thank you.
Councillor Nutt and then Councillor Passero.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start with Emterra, my favorite subject. So when does this contract end?
Yeah, they just received an extension. Doing my own research, and if you want to put all your questions out there, and I'll try to answer them the best that I can.
Well, a comment about it being extended, I think that for the people of Fort Erie, that's pretty unacceptable. I think going back to an RFP probably would have been the preferred option, considering that these people have not been able to meet their contractual agreement for 2-3 years now. I work in a business that counts on staff. I know staffing challenges, but I also know there's lots of ways to overcome that. And I don't feel that they've made significant effort, and I hear from my constituents, they feel the same way, especially when I'm constantly talking about this over and over and over again, also corresponding through email with Mr. Walsh. The only ask I have is the residents that live in Black Creek Leisure Homes, because of the detours, there's significant more truck traffic coming down Netherby Road. A lot of those trucks are using their engine brakes late at night, and one of the elderly gentlemen said, it sounds like a machine gun. My wife jumps out of her skin every time.
Almost as bad as that train whistle.
Almost. Is there any way the region could put up a, don't use engine brake sign between Winger Road and Town Line in the bend, like ahead of the bend, so that drivers could see that and take heed of the sign?
I will certainly bring that issue forward. Anything that impacts our residents, we're going to bring forward on their behalf. But I'll make special point of your comments with respect to Emterra. So I do know that there is a waste committee advisory board. I don't know if there's any 40 representatives on that board. And that subcommittee meets and they pass on that information to Public Works. So I do know that Emterra track record over the last 2 years has been filled with challenges. Now, I don't want to cast any negative dispersions on any of the workforce there because they're doing the best that they can. I'm dispassionate about that particular angle. What I am passionate about is making sure that our residents get the level of service that they deserve and that our ratepayers are paying for. So by all means, Councillor, I share your frustration, I share your concerns, and moving forward, we'll make sure that we're holding Emterra's feet to the fire. If there is a way to revisit the contract and the contract obligations without prejudicing the process moving forward, because it wouldn't be fair to Emterra at this point. But I'll make sure that those concerns are brought forward, and we have a whole litany and a whole list of concerns that we could actually use with respect to leveraging our bargaining power moving forward in that contract. So again, we're going to take all that information forward, and I'm sure the new council, after October 22nd, this will be one of their biggest priorities to make sure that we get a service provider that meets the level of satisfaction of our residents.
Councillor, let me get my oar in the water here, because the Public Works Committee will be dealing with this in September. We've requested a range of options with respect to what can be done with respect to the existing contract. That could range all the way from the potential of termination to removal of routes to make it easier for Emterra to at least manage what it can manage. It's had continuing difficulties with respect to manpower, including today. That's why they were behind, because they didn't have enough trucks out on the road. They had 56 out of 70 that should have been on the road. So that will be dealt with by Public Works in mid-September, and then that will go to Regional Council later in September in terms of how to manage this contract, which has been very problematic. You're quite correct. Did you have anything further, Councillor Nutt?
Yes, I do. I know that.
But I just want to make special, but there,
Sure.
so, when you do get to go to AMO, you liaison with other colleagues from around the province, and it's not unique with respect to Emterra. There's some challenges with some other municipalities and that service provider as well. So collectively, you take in all that information and you try to make a decision moving forward, but it's not unique, and Emterra seems to be struggling when it comes to meeting their obligations in other municipalities as well.
Yeah, and just to clarify on the point, I'm not making aspersions about the workforce. Just from a macro level, as a service we're paying for, it's subpar. And as a taxpayer myself, I don't feel I'm getting value for my tax dollars. And I know that in the past I've asked the question about, last time you were here last month, I asked a question about penalties. So have we enacted any of the contractual penalties, or is that something that can't be discussed?
That's part of what's being, is going to be given to the Public Works Committee in terms of the range of options, including penalties. And there have been some penalties that have been imposed as a result of the failure of Emterra to be able to meet its contractual obligations. The problem is they're penalized financially, which creates more difficulties for the company to hire the resources that they need in order to do the work. However,
A little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
well, but your point is well taken, that this is a responsibility that the elected officials have to the taxpayers, and the taxpayers need to know that their interests are being protected.
Yeah, so
I
just
wait
to
with
that,
bated breath.
so just to that point, though, there is default and remedies clauses within the contract, and we pursue those within the language of the contract, and we have been pursuing those. But to your worship's point, absolutely, you provide the punitive measures to make sure that we're protecting our residents, but it seems to be impacting them in a more negative way. So again, just want to clarify, there's 5 important points. Maintenance of equipment, that's one problem that they're having. Supply of equipment, which is the trucks on the road. Contractors, personnel, customer relations and miscollections, and hours of collection. So those are the 5 issues that we deal with on a regular basis, and within the language of the contract, we are imposing remedies in default.
Anything further, Councillor Nutt? Councillor Passero.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Nunziata, to number 5, which is hours of collection. Is there a time in the evening where residents can assume they're not coming today they can take the garbage in. That's kind of question A. And then question B is, can they also assume to put the garbage out the next day because they're going to come back the following day? Because some people have had it where it's been missed completely. The next time they're missed, they bring it in at 6:30 in the evening, and then they see the truck go by and they have to start the process over. So what kind of message should we be giving residents if they are missed for, you know, a few hours past their normal collection time?
So
What should they expect?
It's a great question, and it's a very practical question, because I'm faced with the exact same questions myself, and as a homeowner, I'm left wondering myself too. My garbage didn't get picked up, do I leave it out there? There has to be a better communication strategy, and I know I do my best, the region does their best to make sure that 5 p.m. comes and they're getting calls that garbage has not been collected. They put out the notice to advise residents that have not had their garbage collected to leave it there for the following day. That is the remedy, that on the following day, if your garbage has not been collected, it will be picked up the next day. So again, it's a bit of a hardship, because I know if you live in a rural area, raccoons and dogs and those kind of things get into the garbage. It may be a case where the homeowner has to bring in their trash and garbage into the garage or into an enclosure and bring it back out the following morning.
Okay, so 5 p.m. is the time that if it hasn't been picked up,
Correct.
nobody's coming after that.
Yeah, so
It's supposed to be 6 p.m., but the difficulty is that Emterra has actually continued beyond that time.
Yeah, that's
trying
why
to-
there's so
trying
much
to
of
keep
a
up.
confusion, yeah.
And so it makes it more
yeah.
confusing. So I don't know whether staff is,
well, part of the remedy that we've imposed is collection, whereas before it was 6:30. Now, collection has to be done by 5 p.m. If collection is not done by 5 p.m., then we will assume that it's a missed collection. Anyone that misses a collection, by all means, report that. Report that to either Emterra staff, report that to the region, report it to your regional counselor, and we will make sure that collection is scheduled for the next day. So 5 p.m., it should be done. If it's not, we will assume that it's a missed pickup.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
any other questions of the regional counselor? If none, then that takes us to presentations and delegations, and we have Jane Dodds on behalf, the president of the Fort Erie Lions Club, and Linda Scott, who is the liaison with, or the chair of the Lions Douglas Heights Seniors Residence. Good evening, and you have a wonderful group of Lions members in the back, whom I presume aren't going to be doing the Lions Roar this evening. Well, I guess we'll find out. Good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Jane Dodds, and I am president of the Fort Erie Lions Club. With me this evening is Linda Scott, chairperson for the board of the Lions Douglas Heights Senior Residence located at 255 High Street. We come before you this evening to request that council waive the pre-consultation fee, which forms part of the formal development process. As you are aware, the Fort Erie Lions celebrated 90 years of service to the community this last year. In those 90 years, the Lions have identified needs within the community and responded with funding for the Lions Banquet Hall at the Leisureplex, the Lions Sugar Bowl Park, Lions Douglas Heights Community Center, and the Lions Douglas Heights Senior Residence. The Senior Residence has been run by a board of directors led by Lion Club members since its construction in the early 1990s. It is a nonprofit, affordable, independent living residence run in conjunction with Niagara Regional Housing. It serves the vulnerable seniors of our community. The board and the building are held in high regard within the region by Niagara Regional Housing and its residents. The Fort Erie Lions Club has again identified a need within our community and are rising to the challenge to help meet it by proposing to build a new, independent, nonprofit, affordable apartment building for the seniors of Fort Erie on our existing property at 255 High Street.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, two undisputable facts. The region needs more affordable housing, and we are an aging population. According to the 2016 census, 47% of the population of Fort Erie is aged between 50 and 65 plus years of age. In all of Greater Fort Erie, there are only 8 seniors, 50 plus, independent, living in affordable apartment complexes for lower income seniors. And Fort Erie has the longest wait list in all of the Niagara region to access those apartments. The result of the housing situation is that when Fort Erie seniors are still able to live an independent life, they are having to look outside of their community to find an apartment. It's not a healthy situation for seniors to move away from their neighborhood, shopping, churches, friends, and family to live in low-rent apartments not geared to their needs in a community that is not their own. Aging in place not only refers to the structure in which seniors live, but also to the community. Mental and emotional health has a direct impact on the overall health of seniors, as does the attachment to community. I know you agree with this, Mr. Mayor, as in response to the $4.2 million new Gilmore Lodge Seniors Home and Long-Term Facility to be built on Garrison Road, you're quoted as saying that this new residence allows people to age in their own community. The Fort Erie Lions are in the early stages of looking at the feasibility of constructing this new apartment building on our existing property at 255 High Street. The Lions Douglas Heights Senior Residence Board has hired a consultant, Ms. Sarah Phillips of Sarah J. Phillips Consulting, to help us identify and access funding for the new building.
As we are in the exploratory phase of this venture, dollars are hard to come by as we formulate a plan in the future. One of the items suggested as necessary before we continue on is a formal consultation with planning staff. There is a price attached to this, and we respectfully ask Town Council to waive this fee. The municipality has recently formed an affordable housing committee, and tonight will appoint members to that committee. I can assure you that you will hear loud and clear that municipalities must create a culture and a development where affordable housing is encouraged. Waiving the pre-consultation fee for those looking to build housing of this type is a small incentive, but mighty in terms of the message it sends, that Fort Erie wants more of these facilities and is willing to assist where possible. We hope that you would find our request to be possible this evening, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dodds and Ms. Scott. And only speaking for myself, you had me when you first said you were requesting the waiver of those fees. Are there members of council have any questions? Councilor McDermott.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I want to thank you for your presentation, and I think it's ironic that tonight we're going to be choosing our Affordable Housing Committee. What a way to start. I mean, I applaud you for your foresight, and we look forward to what you're going to be presenting. And I will be moving a notice of motion with regards to your request.
Thank you.
Any other councilors? This is obviously very timely and very important and very necessary in our community. And the idea that people who have lived here all their lives or a large part of their lives can stay in this community, that's been an issue for a long time. And although your club is young, at some point, some of your members may want to be able to stay in this community. But I'm sure that's many, many years away. But thank you very much for coming out. And I'm hoping that there will be other service organizations as well that will go down this same route to assist us in obtaining affordable housing. For seniors, we've also got affordable housing needs for people who aren't seniors. That's another kettle of fish. But thank you very much, and thank you for all of your members for coming out. Well, all of the members who are here. I know you have a larger group of membership. But thank you very much, and I must say, as you know, I'm a member of the Ridgeway Lions Club and very proud of the work that we do. So
Yes.
Thank you very much, and good luck with respect to this. I have no doubt that Councillor McDermott's motion will find favor as we move forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
And if you're inclined, you may leave at this point. But you're always welcome to stay if you wish. There was one. Are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wonder if we can remove consent agenda item number 2B for further discussion.
Yes, that relates to the cannabis odor, and yeah, that'd be fine. Earlier today, we also received notice of a resolution that the City of Welland passed supporting this resolution. Let's see, Councillor Nutt, you have the resolution with respect to the consent agenda items. So could you move that with the exception of item 2B, please?
Certainly, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zenko, that Council approves the consent agenda items as recommended with the exception of 9 to
Yeah.
B.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to the items that are in the consent agenda? Councillor Luberts.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Reddecup. Just to go to the minutes from the ad hoc committee. When I was going through the minutes, I noticed that one of the members
Which ad hoc committee is that?
Waverly Beach ad hoc committee,
Okay, that's item 9,
3B
D.
or D, yeah. Anyway, I noticed that one of the members keeps mentioning that Councilor Luberts has some data on Waverly Beach and the algae situation. And I do remember having a conversation with this gentleman, but I don't recall telling him that I had data, and I don't want anybody thinking that I have data that I don't want to share. But when the Waverly Beach Roundtable committee met, we write up our minutes and we submit our minutes to our CAO, Tom Cookett. So anything that Mr. Cookett has from our minutes is more than welcome for the ad hoc committee to look at. But if your ad hoc committee member wants to contact me and inform me of what data he's talking about, I'd be more than happy to share it. But we've shared everything with our CAO. And I'd just like to ask the ad hoc committee that I inquired, and I don't know if this should be under inquiries, but I inquired a few weeks ago. In their minutes, they were discussing the toadlets. And I asked if they were talking about the Fowler's toad or if they were talking about the American toad. And I'm hoping that they can verify which toad they're discussing in their minutes.
Is there any member
Thank
here
you.
that can respond to that? Councillor Passero?
Thank you, Worship. I'm the one that said I would get that information to Councillor Luberts. I did send an email to the professor that was speaking, but thank you for the reminder. I haven't heard back, so I will follow up with him.
Okay.
Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Luberts?
No, other than if their member wants to contact me or if they just want to ask Mr. Cookett to look at our minutes, everything that we have is in the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who has any questions with respect to the items in the consent agenda? Councillor Nutt.
Yes, just on the same item that Councillor Luberts is referring to, just so that people at home listening that may not have read this, is that we're making a formal request to the region to do some inspections to identify the phosphorus. And I don't have my notes from that meeting. Yeah, down in the McDonald Drive area to see if there's any leaching into the water table.
Any other, Councillor Luberts?
Yeah, just to follow up on what Councilor Nutt was discussing, There was a professor from the Niagara College, and her students did do a study, and the papers are there. And we've been asking her for a copy of the study, and they did a pretty comprehensive study, so you might want to contact, I know you have some contacts from the Niagara College, so there is definitely, and I can provide you with the name of that lady, I don't have it with me right here, but that the study has been done, and it was done by Niagara. But to qualify, we got to remember it's done by students, so I don't know how scientific it gets,
Hopefully they all
how it gets
passed with honors.
recognized. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But we do know that there are a lot of phosphorus coming out of our drains along the Waverly Beach area.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the items in the consent agenda? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Nutt, I wonder if you would then move that we approve item 9.2B.
Certainly, Your Worship, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zenko, that council approves consent agenda 9.2B as recommended.
Thank you. And Councillor Butler, you wanted to speak a little further on this?
I did. Thank you, Your Worship. I would like our council to endorse and support the town of Pelham on the odor enforcement, but also want to speak to it just a tiny bit further with respect to attending the cannabis lecture on Wednesday morning at AMO, and some of the things that the municipalities are trying to circle around with the province and the federal government to ensure that proper enforcements for other items are going to be done, and also to empower the municipalities to take a look at the retail outlets that are going to come into the municipalities and how we're going to handle it as opposed to the federal government or the provincial government. And further to that, I just wondered, since we have been working very hard on this issue, I wondered if you would indulge and allow Mr. Brady to speak to it a bit.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Mr. Brady. This is
you.
an update as to what you've been able to garner so far.
To a degree, it's also an update on to where we're at in terms of our discussions with the federal government. So as council may or may not be aware, we have written to the federal government, to the health department, with the concerns that council has expressed on the licensing of outdoor growth for plants and some of the issues associated with that, which included odor, but included other issues such as surface waters. We've also asked the federal government to reconsider their programs in terms of licensing farmers with no regulations whatsoever, because at the present time, the outdoor growth of plants is completely unregulated, but the federal government is continuing to provide licenses to farmers to do that. As council, I'm sure, is aware, when cannabis is grown inside a building, be it an industrial building or be it a greenhouse, the program that we have in place requires a site plan, and all of the people who are doing that kind of, or trying to do that kind of growth, are doing that, and they're working with us quite vigilantly in terms of having the site plan where we can actually deal with some of the odor issues. We inquired briefly with the federal government about, or the provincial government, about how municipalities can be involved in the locating of retail outlets. And what we've heard to date is that there are no regulations or no guidelines on that, and that it's simply a yes or no question. Yes, the municipality may permit cannabis retail, or no, they cannot. We've suggested to them that we think that it should be more refined than that, and I understand that at AMO that question was provided to the provincial government from a number of municipalities, and I'm looking forward to the province giving us a little more detail on how municipalities may or may not participate in those programs.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Further to that, AMO did make a presentation with respect to a case study that was done in Colorado. So I'm going to do some research and then pass that along to council once I have that in hand. But it relates to the environment as a direct result, and some of the things that some of the measures they've had to put in place to safeguard the environmental concerns that we're currently looking at. So I thought that was very interesting and very timely.
And those concerns also include water.
Yes, exactly.
Just to comment further on Mr. Brady's comments relative to the opt-out provision, we don't have the regulations yet. Those regulations probably won't be provided to municipalities until later in the fall, maybe the end of the year, with an April 19th date for the startup of sales in retail outlets across Ontario. The one thing that the provincial representative mentioned was that this opt-out will be, you can opt out now, but you may be able to opt in the future. However, that's rather unsatisfactory, I think, and I tend to agree with Mr. Brady in terms of a more refined protocol with respect to that. One of the other speakers, though, the lawyer for, I'm going to say one of the municipalities in York Region, talked about the potential for the municipalities to have some control over zoning for not only the retail outlets, but I got the impression as well, perhaps with respect to other locations. So that's something that our staff should be looking into, and that's where the costs and human resources are going to come in to big play. So yeah, very, very enlightening, very interesting, and a lot of gray areas, very timely, a lot of gray areas. Anything further, Councillor Butler? Did any other councillor wish to comment on this? Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. When I read through the resolution from Pelham, I mean, we don't get too much detail, but I don't see anything in here where they're giving the municipalities any enforcement authority. So we complain to the federal government or the provincial government, but are they going to allow us to have some authority for enforcing, like, and this here resolution is all about the odors that are emitting from these units. And
That
we know that, if we got to go to the federal government for help, it could take forever, but we could handle it ourselves.
Well, that we don't know, and the provincial regulations should outline to some extent what the authority will be that will be given to the municipalities. There are areas where municipality can act with respect to other substances, but there's nothing so far in the regulations that would allow the municipality to act relative to...
Should we be requesting that and maybe bring something forward that
we can
request from the provincial and federal governments that we need some kind of, we're looking for zoning authority, right?
That's something that AMO has taken up, but there's no reason why we couldn't look further into that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other councillors? If none, all those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to new business inquiries, and the first matter for business, Councillor Luberts, you have the resolution. Resolution number 2.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. That council accepts the resignation of Laura Carranza from the Communities in Bloom Committee, and further that council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to that resolution? All those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. Councillor Passero, you have the next resolution.
Yes, Your Worship, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that Council appoints Joe Spaeth to the Museum and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee for the period ending November 30th, 2018.
That'd be Joe Spath. Yeah, no, he goes by Spath. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to the resolution relative to the Affordable Housing Committee. And Madam Clerk, how would you like to manage this?
Yes, so we have to select members. We need 2 members from the senior citizens organizations. We need 1 member out of 2 that have applied for the development community. And we need 2 from the community of large. We have 3 applicants. And then we need 1 member of council.
So you would like us to complete the ballots that you've provided to us and then give them to you for tabulation?
Exactly, yes, sir.
Okay, so why don't we do that right now then?
Is there any member of council that wanted to be on?
Well, let's get these done, and then we'll deal with the counselor while the clerk is tabulating the other results. I guess on the ballot, we need to put in the name of a counselor. So, is there any counselor that wishes to sit on this committee? Counselor Butler? So we'll put Counselor Butler's name in. Any other counselors? Then, yeah.
We have an alternate.
Terms of reference didn't provide for one, but I certainly think that it might be a good idea if you do.
Okay, so we'll have Counselor Butler as the council representative. And Counselor Nutt wishes to be alternate. Anyone else? Then Counselor Nutt will be the alternate. And if you've completed your ballots, I would ask you to hand them to the clerk.
Your Worship, I have the results.
Okay,
For 2 members from senior citizens organizations, I have Richard Patterack and Linda Whitaker. For the Affordable Housing Committee, 1 from the Development Community is Kelly Kendrick Collings. Selection from 2 from the community at large, we have Julie Longafee and Linda Scott. And of course, the councilors.
okay, if we all have that, then Councillor Butler, if you would proceed, please, with the resolution. Oh. Okay, I see that. I've flipped over a page, or they're in, no, wait a second. I have you as having the resolution. And I have Councillor Zanko having the, yeah, I have Councillor Zanko having the physician one. Is it resolution number 4? No. I see what's happened. Right. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. That council appoints 1 member from Bridges Community Health Centre, Ashley Chiarello, Health Promoter, Bridges Community Health Centre, 2 members from the community at large, Julie Longafee and Linda Scott, 1 member from the Fort Erie Multicultural Society, Roderick McDowell, 2 members from Senior Citizens Organization.
Sorry.
Is that wrong? Is it all wrong?
Yeah, that was a mistake. No,
That's what I
just the
thought.
one.
I'm like, that doesn't
It's
sound
Martha
right.
Mason.
Okay. Okay. We need one of those film actors. Take 2. Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that council appoints 1 member from Bridges Community Health Centre, Ashley Chiarello, Health Promoter, Bridges Community Health Centre. 1 member from the Fort Erie Multicultural Society, Martha Mason, Executive Director and Chair, Fort Erie Housing Coalition. 2 members from Senior Citizens Organizations. That's Richard Patterack and Linda Whitaker. 1 member from the Development Community, Kelly Kendrick. 2 from the community at large, which is Julie Longafee and Linda Scott. And 1 member of council, which is Councillor Butler, and an alternative, which is Councillor Nutt, to the Affordable Housing Committee for the period ending November 30th, 2018.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. That then takes us to the next resolution, which relates to appointments to the Community Health Committee. And again, we have some selections to make by ballot. So let's complete those and then pass them on to Ms. Schofield. Are there counselors who wish to be appointed to this committee? Mr. Pacero? Counselor McDermott? Anyone else? Okay, so if there are no others, those will be the two.
Your Worship, I've
Yes.
tallied the ballots.
Yes.
We have Mary Martin Bachu, Joan M. Christensen, Amy Devereaux, and John Walpole.
Who was the second one?
Joan Christensen.
Right, so, yep, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Nutt, that Council appoints one member from the Fort Erie Physicians Community, Dr. Patricia Teal, MD, FRSC, one member from the Halton Niagara Handyman Brand Local Niagara Integration Network, Vanessa Leve, Sub-Regional Director of Niagara Health and Niagara Northwest, one member of the Niagara region, or the Region of Niagara Public Health, Jill Crochu, CHRL, Physician Recruitment and Retention Coordinator, Organizational and Foundational Standards, Public Health, Niagara Region, 4 members from the community at large, which is Mary Martin Batchew, Joan Christensen, Amy Devereaux, and John Walpole, 2 members of council, which is Councillor Passero and Councillor Butler, and Mayor Wayne Redicott, Councillor McDermott. Sorry, Councillor McDermott. And Mayor Wayne Redicott, to the Community Health Care Services Committee for the period ending November 30th, 2018.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Then there's responses to inquiries. There are 2. Mr. Brady, I think you have both of them. Mr. Walsh have one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll split the duties here. My response is in regards to the request that staff obtain advice with the town solicitor as to what remedies, if any, are available to the town if the Ministry of Transportation does not correct detour routes and undertake road repairs due to the Bowen Road closure and detours. In response, the solicitor and myself met about a week ago, and we both feel that regardless of the increase in traffic, as long as the detour is signed correctly, there is nothing the town can do. Staff have verified that the detour requires that all traffic travel on regional roads, with the exception of Pettit Road and Ridgemount Road.
Thank you. And Mr. Brady, according to the addendum, you also have a response to an inquiry?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do. This is an inquiry which was made by yourself on the August 13th meeting. The nature of the inquiry is to confirm that it is a required condition of the town that construction vehicles use Nathaniel Drive out to Pettit Road rather than going through Green Acres subdivision. The response to that inquiry is the developer of the High Point subdivision recently completed paving work on the existing section of Green Acres Drive. So it is possible that the recent construction traffic is a result of that work outside of the subdivision limits. Subdivision construction access road is complete and paved with asphalt. In addition, a temporary secondary access to Green Acres Drive has been built to permit traffic to access that road without having to enter the existing neighborhood, since the road connections are part of a future phase. We will again advise the developer of the need for all construction traffic to use Nathaniel Drive for access. However, as we have experienced in other developments, from time to time a driver may not get the message or simply miss the access road and enter the subdivision through the adjacent neighborhood. We have provided that advice to the developer.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any other items of new business or inquiries? Of course.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Brady, with regard to Nathaniel and Green Acres Drive, they have been paved and they are quite nice. But I guess my question, and maybe I should have been a bit more specific, is we know that construction vehicles were using the Pettit Road access. We know that the road is in terrible state. And what we don't know is what can be done to that road to assist to some of the residents that live in that area.
Which road are you referring to?
Green Acres Drive and Pettit. Pound.
Mr. Brady, Pound Avenue and Pettit. So you're suggesting that construction vehicles are still using Pound Avenue?
No, I'm not suggesting that they still are, but I know that they were, and I know that Pound Avenue and Pettit, leaning up to Pettit, is still in quite terrible condition. So I'm wondering what the developer is prepared to do to perhaps consider some work to that area.
That's something I think staff needs to look into. Both Mr. Walsh and Mr. Brady can look into, unless you've got some knowledge of that now.
I don't. I'm just trying to take a note here. So I believe it's what can be done to the current condition of Pound Road and
Pound Avenue near Pettit.
we will look into that.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Zanko?
No, nothing further, thank you.
Okay, any other councillors? Councillor Butler?
Thank you. At the last meeting, I had requested information with respect to 3822 Elm Street and the stump removal, and I did get an answer with respect to that it would be done in August, and a follow-up from Mr. Walsh. But through you to the worship, to Mr. Walsh, and with all due respect, there's 4 days left in August.
Is that 3822 Elm? Elm, yes. Mr. Walsh? You know the status of that?
Not the direct status, Mr. Mayor. My conversations are with Mr. Hutton as of last Thursday. The councillor's calendar notations are noted.
Anything further?
One more, if you don't mind. Sure. With respect to receiving some correspondence regarding Bernard Beach and the ongoing request to resolve the issue of aesthetics, and also I understand that we can't do anything about a wet beach anymore because of the redirection of the to alleviate flooding in the area. But I'm wondering if there is anything that we can do to take a look at that situation through you to Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have plans for treatment of the end of the pipe to make it a little prettier. Other than that, there's not much we can do about the appearance of the beach.
Councillor Butler?
I'm just going to bring up a notice of motion when it comes time later on.
Sure. Any other inquiries? Councillor Passero and then Councillor Nutt.
Thank you, Your Worship. And nice to see Councillor Nunziata, because I probably could have raised this earlier, but to our infrastructure staff, I've had some concerns from residents as well as those involved in the fire department regarding the curbing that leads into Central Fire Station. And I don't know if this has made it to yourself, Mr. Nunziata, but it seems to be extremely harsh as you come in off of Central Avenue into either where the volunteers park or where we allow the public to park to access the museum. I see Mr. Walsh is nodding his head. I know it was raised about a year ago with somebody at the region. I've been told that person is no longer with the region, so just wondering if we could get this back on track. It just does not seem to be your normal curb cuts as you would enter a driveway or any other type of facility.
Mr. Walsh, do you know something about this?
Yes, Fire Chief Melanson, myself, and it was John Rizzo at the region were discussing it. It has been passed on to Rizzo's superior, so we are still dealing with it. Kind of got lost in the shuffle when Mr. Rizzo retired.
Right, so you still have that on your radar?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Passero, anything further?
No.
Councillor Nutt?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to pass along to Mr. Walsh some accolades for Mr. Hutton. I know while you were out on vacation, we had 2 dead trees that were very close to the sidewalks and with a lot of children in the neighborhood. He extensively followed up with me to ensure that they were cut down when and timetable before school started. And I just want to tell him that a few people in the neighborhood just wanted to pass along thank yous for the great job he did on following up to make sure that they got taken down.
Great, that's very much appreciated. I'm sure you'll
Thank you.
pass that on, Mr. Walsh, and undoubtedly Mr. Hutton will be very appreciative. Are there any other inquiries? If not, then that takes us to motions. And Councillor Nutt, you have the resolution with respect to rural road infrastructure.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, regarding a rural road infrastructure plan, whereas the town of Fort Erie has a significant number of rural roads, and whereas the province of Ontario requires the town of Fort Erie to develop an asset management plan to address long-term funding for renewal of existing infrastructure, and whereas the residents living in rural areas have voiced concern over the condition of these roads and the need for repairs are significant, and whereas the council of the town of Fort Erie recognizes the need to address these infrastructure issues in a timely manner, now therefore it be resolved that the council requests that a separate rural road strategy be given consideration as part of the next council strategic plan, and further that council directs town staff to investigate alternatives, other strategies, and a communication plan to residents for consideration as part of the council's next strategic plan, or the next council's strategic plan.
Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Nutt?
I would.
Please
Thank
do.
you, Your Worship. There are several areas in our community where people don't enjoy the same luxuries as those that live in urbanized, developed up areas such as sidewalks, streetlights, curbs, water, municipal sewer. Even some parts don't even have their own natural gas lines run. So really, there's only a few services that they see value in their tax dollars. The roads being one, policing being another, snow removal, garbage pickup is really all they see from their tax dollars. So I really think that being a new counselor, one thing I've learned over the last 4 years is that these people feel somewhat disadvantaged when their road hasn't been addressed for 30 years. And I think that although we can't do everything because there are budgetary constraints, we've made good progress this term, and I'd like to see that momentum carried through. And I think that staff has done well in working with us to address a great deal of infrastructure needs during this term. I don't want to see that momentum lost in the next term, and I see this as, okay, we've heard what the community's had to say, especially in the rural areas, and this would be the next step, the evolution in the next term of council to say the province put a lot on municipalities to do from an asset management perspective, and we're trying to do everything we can to meet the provincial standards, to meet the requirements set out by the last government in power. So the asset management plan being one. But there are several roads. So Maple, Cherry, Shawnee, Jewson, Lower Road, Grayson, Burger, Church Street, Sunset North, just to name a few off the top of my head, where it isn't a lack of willingness from town staff. I just want to make that very clear. Like, town staff, I think, has done an excellent job on moving us forward from an infrastructure asset replacement plan during this term. And it's not from their, it's not from lack of trying. They do a good job, but we need to look to the future and develop something more robust. And a lot of the information that goes out in the community, a lot of people have asked questions. Well, why has this been done to the road? When the road doesn't have a proper base, there are certain steps you need to do before you can put asphalt down. And I think that part of the strategic plan needs to be a communication piece to say we have to do these things first before we can ever consider asphalt, because if we put asphalt down, it will crack, it will buckle, it will be a waste of money within 2 years, and we'll be back to square one, probably even worse. So I brought forward this motion, and I think it's an important one to continue the momentum, and two, to address the asset management needs and have the town continue to look to the future for these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nutt. Anyone else wish to comment or ask any questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. Councillor Nutt, you have the next resolution.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, regarding changes to Point Abano's speed limit, whereas the speed limit on Point Abano Road North of Garrison to Netherby Road is currently 80 kilometers per hour, and whereas the local farmers, residents use this road heavily with their farm equipment, walking, bicycling, riding horses, and whereas the residents of Point Avenue Road have requested a reduction in the speed limit due to the danger inherent with the current speed limit, and whereas the council of the town of Fort Erie recognizes the need to reduce the speed limit on Point Avenue Road, now therefore it be resolved that council directs the speed limit on Point Avenue Road from Garrison Road to Netherby Road to be reduced from 80 kilometers to 70 kilometers, and further that council directs town staff to install a three-way stop at the corner of Bowen Road and Point Avenue Road, and further that council directs the speed limit signs to be changed accordingly, and further that council directs staff to submit a bylaw to council to amend the traffic bylaw number 2000-89 as amended to implement the foregoing. May I speak to that?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, the residents in the area, I've had several discussions over the last couple of years. They put together a petition, and what has really prompted it is obviously an increase in population. We have more people on that road. It's a direct artery to get from, you know, Crystal Beach and Ridgeway to Welland. I use that road quite frequently myself when I go to Welland, and I know the mayor does as well, coming from his law office. There's a lot of concern, especially with the farmers and their slow-moving, heavily loaded wagons where I was speaking with a constituent. I actually went to their house. They showed me video that they had taped when they were outside on their front porch of what appeared to be, and I'm going to say allegedly, street racing, because I don't know. I'm not a police officer. I can't really say, but I'm going to stick those words in there for obvious reasons. Sure. But it was a concern, and when I went back 2 weeks later, she had a fresh new incident that happened, that her husband was pulling a hay wagon. He was trying to pull into their driveway, and a car was coming at such a high rate of speed at the corner near Bowen Road and Point Avenue that the person had no choice but to go through the ditch onto their front lawn or else hit the wagon. So this is a last resort and the last thing I want to do. I would love to see enforcement, but I have been driving Point Avenue Road heavily, and again, one of the services that constituents pay for is policing. We're definitely underserved. This is an area that definitely needs more attention, and I have to agree with the constituents. I've spent a Saturday morning sitting there for over an hour right by the roadside, and I can tell you, when you're sitting there, you can tell pretty much when a car is going below the speed limit and when a car is going over the speed limit. Now, whether it's 10 over, 20 over, 30 over, to me it doesn't really matter. The law's the law and the speed limit's the speed limit. So I'm really hoping that this will help the farmers who use that artery at Bowen Road and Point Avenue Road with their farm equipment, and people will take a little more care when driving down this road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nutt. Any further comments or questions by any members of council? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just looking at the resolution and the total idea of reducing the speed limit, I don't have a problem reducing the speed limit, but you know, when you talk to residents in the area, they say, well, if you reduce it to 80, from 80 to 70, they'll do 80. If you reduce it to from 70 to 60, they'll do 70. And the people are still speeding. Well, one thing that I noticed is when they reduced the speed limit on Gorham Road between Dominion Road and Nye Road, in that area there, the people were still doing the old speed limit. And until the Niagara Regional Police were there and started doing the enforcement, and I traveled that road every day, 2-3 times a day, and the police were there and they were giving out tickets. And a couple months later, now you can go there on a regular basis. Everybody's doing the speed limit. So reducing the speed limit with a sign is one thing, but we need the enforcement. If we're not going to enforce it, I'm afraid that, you know, we're all a creature of habit. Everybody's used to doing 80 kilometers on Point Avenue Road. I don't know that anybody's going to change unless they start getting tickets. So I think, I'll support the motion, but I think we need to continue on with the Niagara region and continue asking them, we need enforcement, because I've seen it firsthand, the results of enforcement on Gorham Road, and I could say that it works. But if they're not going to enforce it, I don't know that we're going to do much changing here. So I think we should continue on putting pressure on the police and have more enforcement.
Your observations about Gorham Road are absolutely correct. Mr. Cookett, is this something that you could, if this resolution passes, or regardless whether it passes, there's a need for some police presence periodically to enforce the speed limit? Can you perhaps pursue that with the staff sergeant, local staff sergeant?
I will do that, absolutely. I'll sit down with Staff Sergeant Kim McAllister and let her know our issues there and see if we can get a more police presence out there to start enforcing the speed limit. Like the councillor says, unless you can post it whatever you like, but unless the police enforce it, it really means nothing.
Mr. Walsh, you had spoken to me about this beforehand. Did you have any comments with respect to the resolution?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This issue was brought before the Transportation Coordinating Committee. We spoke about it at length July 26, 2017, a year ago. That was in response to the petition received, as Councillor Nutt states. We received that in October 2015. So we did traffic and speed counts in 2016, discussed it in 2017. The speed studies showed that the majority of the traffic between Highway 3 and Bowen was traveling at less than 100 kilometers an hour, 20 kilometers over. Between Bowen and Netherby, because of the vertical delineations in the road, that speed dropped to 90 kilometers an hour on an 80 kilometer an hour posted road. That's a very reasonable limit. We do note in our study that there are no traffic incidents attributed to the road geometry. Most of the incidents that occur there are due to weather-related issues. During the discussions, we talked about lowering the speed limit, and as Councillor Luberts noted, without enforcement, you can post all the signs you want. People will drive at the speed they're comfortable at, and those speeds are, as I've noted earlier. The NRP simply does not have the forces to enforce a reduced speed limit right now. They do provide periodic enforcement, but unless they're out there all the time, which they can't be, the speeds will more or less be the same as they are now. The issue with that, combined with a reduced speed limit, is that when you're entering Point Avenue Road from either a driveway or an adjacent road, is that you have an expectation of a lower approach speed from the vehicles because of the lowered speed limit. And it's hard to judge the speed of oncoming traffic. You can judge how far away they are, but you can't judge the speed of them. So with this lowered expectation of speed, they do approach intersections at a higher rate than you're expecting, and that can lead to accidents and incidents. Further, with the three-way stop, that was also in the we looked at that as part of the petition. The traffic volumes in that area do not warrant the three-way stop at Bowen, and the trouble with stop signs that aren't warranted is eventually they turn into rolling stops, because as you get used to the stop sign and every time you approach it, there's no traffic coming the other way, you start to wonder why they're there, and you start rolling through the intersection, and eventually you get two cars at the same time rolling through an intersection, and that's when accidents occur. So as the Traffic Coordinating Committee minutes noted, back in July a year ago, both myself as an engineer and the committee do not support Councillor Nutt's motion.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. Any member of council? Do you want to respond?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. So that being said, if people, based on what Mr. Walsh is saying, if people are driving 90 and an 80, then they'll drive 80 and a 70. So in effect, we have reduced the speed. Secondly, what he said too, I'd like to know how many accidents occur out here with Ferndale, off Ferndale, and these streets that all abut onto Garrison Road, because you can't really judge how fast the car's going. And this is a zone, especially now with the school there, where it has 2 different posted speed limits based on a flashing light. So I don't put a lot of creed into that comment, although I'd like to see some data that the traffic coordinating committee looked at to make these determinations. I haven't been supplied that. If he wants to supply it, I have no problem. The fact of the reason why I'm asking for a 3-way stop there is that bridge is extra wide. There are many farmers that use it. They have slow-moving equipment, and nobody seems to take that into consideration when they're traveling at a high rate of speed down that road. So if they have to stop and no one's there, they have to stop and no one's there. Thank you.
So, Mr. Walsh, you'll be able to pass on the information that you'd referred to Councillor Nutt?
Yes, so just to confirm that, Councillor Nutt's looking for accident numbers for all of Point Avenue Road?
No, well. I
But
presume-
also-
Yeah, I presume.
All the data.
And
But
the
al-
information, that was tendered at the traffic coordinator.
I can provide updated information as of today. And also Garrison Road where Crescent Park meets.
Sorry?
Garrison Road where Crescent Park intersects.
I don't think.
He had
you're
mentioned
looking for-
Ferndale, Ferndale and Garrison, for instance. Well, one thing I would like to add is that Garrison in this area is a 60-kilometer-an-hour speed limit. But when I said that the speed was 90 kilometers an hour in an 80 zone, I also noted that a reduction in the speed limit wouldn't necessarily reduce the speed of vehicles. In rural areas, cars travel at the speed they're comfortable with. And the speed that they're comfortable with between Bowen and Netherby is 90 kilometers an hour.
Still over the speed limit.
Certainly is.
And pretty fast, because that's a fairly narrow road with no sidewalks and trees encroaching on certain areas. In any event, sure, Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment, as I am the council representative on the Traffic Coordinating Committee, and we have been discussing this for a number of years, and I am going to be supporting Councillor Nutt's motion simply because he has residents that have been coming to him year after year after year. They live in the area. They're telling him that they feel that their lives are at risk sometimes by using this road. I know that we base, I'm not an engineer. I know we base a lot of our decisions around our staff, which provide us with the analytics to, support whether we should have an increase or a decrease in speed limit. And we also have the NRP that comments. I am going to be supporting this simply because what I heard on that meeting during July 27th and for the couple years that we've been discussing it is that it wouldn't necessarily hurt to reduce the speed limit. It's just enforcement. So I don't think by doing a reduced speed limit or an additional stop sign or 3-way stop, I don't think that's going to harm anything. I'm hopeful that perhaps maybe some of the residents are put at ease to some degree, and that's why I'll be supporting Councillor Nutt's motion tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor McDermott, and then I'll go back to you, Councillor Lubberts, after everyone's spoken.
Well, I think in this case, I have to agree with Councillor Nutt. The dilemma is, again, we were just talking about roads in the country, and now we're talking about speed enforcement in the country. And we don't want the people that live in the rural areas to think that we're leaving them hanging. I mean, at bare minimum, we can do this. If the NRP doesn't want to enforce the law, that's one thing. But we had a couple of hundred people on a petition. They constantly stick with the program. If they weren't annoyed by it, they wouldn't be calling us. So I kind of think we should go a little further with the NRP to, you know, have a presence there every so often at least. And I just think that it's time that we start listening to the rural people, and this is a good start right here.
Anyone else before I go back to, Councillor Luberts? Then I'd go back to you. Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just to follow up on Mr. Walsh's comments about the Niagara Regional Police and their resources as far as enforcement. I think he said that they're lacking in resources to do the speed limit enforcement, but they didn't lack in resources when they were doing Gorham Road. And I'm wondering, maybe they could get those officers and have them go and do Point Avenue Road. But getting back to the three-way stop at Bowen Road, and I understand what Councillor Nutt is looking for, but we have a resolution in front of us, a motion in front of us, and if we pass the motion, for Mr. Walsh to get the information to Councillor Nutt about the traffic and all the incidences because of the three-way, is kind of redundant because the motion is already going to pass. If Mr. Nutt or Councillor Nutt is satisfied with the information that he's provided, are we going to change and get rid of the three-way stop? So I don't know how we can proceed unless we hold off on this motion until we get the information from Mr. Walsh, or we forego the information from Mr. Walsh so that he's not getting information. I just don't want him to waste his time. If we're going to pass the motion, then there's no reason for him to get that information forward.
Yeah, my impression was that Councillor Nutt was simply wanting the information to, because it was being offered. He wants to proceed with his motion, so that will relieve you, Mr. Waltz, of providing information if Councillor Nutt doesn't require it. Doesn't require it. So that's one less thing you have to do, Mr. Walsh. Anything further, Councillor Luberts?
No, but I just want to make it a point. I'm not going to buy into the fact that they don't have the resources. They had the resources on Gorham Road. They certainly can find the resources and it has to be all the time. I think in Gorham Road, it only took 3 or 4 months of steady tickets. I was fortunate I didn't get one, but there's a lot of people in the area that did get them. And so now there's no problem, and I think they could do the same thing on Point Avenue.
Councillor Zanko. Sorry, Councillor Passero, before I go back to you, Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Worship. In my experience, I've always found the NRP to be very responsive when we have made changes to something, whether it's the addition of a stop sign or the flashing 40 we put onto Garrison. So I have no doubt that Mr. Cookett will be able to speak to Staff Sergeant McAllister and make those arrangements. It's from that point on, and we are not any different than any other municipality whose residents I talk to. Speeding is a systemic issue regardless, and somebody doing 180 is really no different than somebody doing 55 and a 50. 55 and a 50 is 10% over the limit, usually in the heart of a residential neighborhood, and those people view that car going down the road to be equally as fast and in the wrong as somebody doing 180. So I don't think one issue necessarily plays over another. They are stretched for resources. We'd like them to be on every street at every hour because you don't know when the speeders are coming. That's just not the reality that we have to deal with at the moment. But will they be out in full force when this change is made? Absolutely, I don't have any doubts. Will they kind of put this onto their list for the next couple of months after that? Probably. Will it fall off and come in line with where we experience traffic issues elsewhere as far as speeding? Probably. But that's what we have to work with. The best we can do is to hope that this sends a message to reassure the residents. So I appreciate Councillor not doing that. In my experience, most of the people who speed live in the neighborhood because they become comfortable with the surroundings. They think that nobody's ever coming around that corner, or nobody's ever coming around from that side. So hopefully word spreads, and if a few tickets are handed out to people who live in the neighborhood during this brief period of extra enforcement, hopefully word will travel. I never go even 1 kilometer over the speed limit on a Saturday morning coming down Pettit Road towards Garrison, because I just know that's a pretty intense spot. I see other people get pulled over, word gets around. So hopefully word will get around, and I appreciate Councillor Nutt bringing this forward. I appreciate the technical background as to justification, why versus why not, but if that many residents are asking for it, sometimes be careful what you ask for. You might be the one getting that ticket, but if that's what it takes, I welcome it. Thank you, Councillor Nutt.
There you go, Councillor Nutt. Councillor Zanko.
Actually, what I was going to say is very similar to what Councillor Passero just said regarding the NRP. And, you know, I do have the privilege of sitting on that traffic coordinating committee with Sergeant McAllister, and she's very, very concerned with safety. She does take all of our concerns very seriously, and I just want to point out that every single councillor around this horseshoe is asking for enforcement to roads in their area. So when we say lack of resources, the NRP suffers with, you know, staff on vacation. It's summer months, and every single one of us is asking during some times for additional enforcement. So again, just what Councillor Passero said, I don't want all of our comments to come across in a negative way, because the NRP is very much committed to enforcement.
Anyone else? No, we've already had twice. You've had 2 kicks at the bucket. Let's just keep this moving along. Anyone else that hasn't spoken twice? All those in favor of the resolution? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor McDermott, I wonder if I could hand the chair to you so that I can do my motion?
Yes, Your Worship, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I move, seconded by Councillor Nutt, that whereas the people of Ontario are blessed with the Great Lakes and miles of diverse waterfront, and whereas the waters of the Great Lakes constitute the largest reservoir of fresh water in the world, and whereas the value of these waters as a life-sustaining resource can best be understood and appreciated by the public if it has access to the waterfront along the shoreline of the Great Lakes, and whereas the MPPs for Niagara Falls, Fort Erie, Niagara-on-the-Lake have presented private members' bills, the rite of passage bills, to ensure public walking rights along Ontario's Great Lakes shoreline, and whereas none of these private members' bills have been passed by the Ontario legislature, and whereas now, more than ever, the right of the public to walk along the Great Lakes shoreline should be confirmed by statute, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Fort Erie calls upon the Premier, Doug Ford, to present and enact government legislation, the Rite of Passage Act, to A, ensure that the public has the right to walk along Great Lake shorelines between the water's edge and the high water mark, B, require removal by property owners of all fences running vertical to the shoreline, a distance of no less than 10 feet from the water's edge, and any other obstructions to the public's right to walk the shore. C, permit public access to the Great Lakes shoreline only via public lands, such as parks, road allowances, or easements. And D, prohibit the public from any activity on privately owned waterfront other than a right to walk along the shoreline. And further, that a copy of this resolution be delivered to the Premier, the Honourable Doug Ford, for action, and to the MPPs and MPs in Niagara, the Clerk of the Niagara Region, and the area municipalities for information and support. Just very briefly, I think the preamble pretty well sets out the context. For years and years, people have walked along the shoreline. Most of the individuals who own property along the waterfront in Fort Erie are quite amenable to and understanding of the desire of people to walk along the shoreline. Most of the people that walk along the shoreline do just that. They're well behaved and they're courteous, and they recognize the rights of the private property owners. There are exceptions, and those exceptions create difficulty for the property owners in giving latitude. There are also exceptions. There are some people who insist upon enforcing their property rights to the limit and try to prevent individuals from walking along the shoreline. It's I would suggest, element of the birthright of the people that live in this area to be able to walk along the waterfront. Maybe legally speaking, that's not quite correct, and why the Crown would have granted rights to the water's edge, and in some cases into the water, is unimaginable, in the sense that these are international waters, and in many countries, the Crown has reserved military rights along the waterfront, which would, in this case, have been an easy solution. So, in order for this particular right to be recognized, it seems that it will have to be a government bill. And since now there is a new government, and that new government, or members of that government when they were in opposition, did show support for this type of legislation, this may be the best opportunity that we have. So I'm asking for the support of this council, and I'm hoping that other municipalities in Niagara will also support this so that we can get some traction to move this forward. Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions? Councilor Pissarro.
Thank you, Acting Chair McDermott. I'm fully supportive. This is not new to this council. Several years ago, this council endorsed rite of passage legislation. I want to thank Gary Scarrett, the founder of the Ontario Shorewalk Association. This was his doing, his fight, and is still a fight that he's leading, as well as the immediate past president, Benny Van Osh. There's only been 3 presidents of Shorewalk. I'm happy to be included in that group. And during each of our tenures, we would each tour the province, because we're not the only municipality facing these types of challenges. There are a number of things that we can do locally, and I think we should be doing locally. Even some of the items mentioned in here could be locally initiated, but this sends a symbolic message to the province that this is an issue that we do need their support on. It won't be a one-size-fits-all approach, because what could work in Fort Erie definitely will not work in some of the more built-up waterfront environments, but it does get the conversation going. We did make it, Shorewalk with rite of passage as a private member's bill, past second reading, which most private members' bills do not even get that far. For those who aren't aware, a private member's bill dies when the writ is dropped or an election is called. So that's why it didn't advance. But at the time, all three parties did speak favorably. Whether or not that was in earnest or not, you will never know, because generally a private member bill very rarely makes it out of to third reading, which is out of committee stage. And sometimes it looks drastically different when it comes out of committee than it does going in. But these tenets, I think, do speak to the issues we have in Fort Erie, so I'm happy to support this tonight, and I know that Mr. Gary Scarrett will be thrilled as well. Thank you, Chair McDermott.
All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott, and thank you, members of council. That takes us to notices of motion. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move that council waives all fees associated with the pre-consultation meeting for the Fort Erie Lions new apartment building. And I'll get the proper wording done in a couple of days.
That's fine, and as long as you've got it before the next regular council meeting. And in the meantime, Mr. Brady, perhaps you could give us some background information for the council to get an understanding of what the implications of that are. Beg your pardon? No, prior to the next regular council meeting, when maybe a memo to go along with the notice of motion. Councillor Butler, you also were contemplating a notice of motion?
Actually, I have 2, Your Worship. So the first one is with respect to Bernard Beach, and I'd like to bring up a notice of motion to receive a report on ways we can resolve the issues at hand, and I'll be more thorough with that motion as we go along.
Yes, and you'll find that we've already done some work on that during this term of council, so that Mr. Walsh can perhaps give you some background information when you're crafting the final wording of that.
That would be great, because I know that they've worked hard, and the engineering department are brilliant individuals. and want to make sure that the public at large understand what we're up against. The second notice of motion is with respect to a recent article about the potential land sale of the properties where the Fort Erie racetrack exists, and I've received several comments from the community at large. One asking us if it's going to be a tourism venue, which we have no knowledge what's going to happen to that particular parcel of land, and also if the possibility of the land is going to be used for affordable housing units and for a community hub pilot project. So I'd like to make a notice of motion, and I'm wondering if we could waive the rules of procedure so that this particular motion can come forward with respect to directing staff to support the EDTC in the preparation of a business plan with respect to potential uses for the track lands and a look at including the potential affordable housing units and the sustainability of tourism venues.
So, two things on that. I don't think it's appropriate to waive the rules, but the next regular council meeting, which will be in 2 weeks, may provide the EDTC with an opportunity to deal with this as well, so that the horse is getting in front of the cart rather than the other way around. So I would suggest that it be a notice of motion that we deal with it in 2 weeks. And Councillor McDermott, I don't know if I got the timing of yours, but that's 2 weeks, I take it. Yeah. No, the next regular council meeting would be September the 10th. Okay?
That's fine, Your Worship.
Okay. Any other notices of motion? If not, then that takes us to consideration of bylaws. And Councillor, so we need 3 bylaws removed from the package. Those are bylaws 105, 106, and 112. Councillor Passero, you have the resolution with respect to first and second reading, and so I would ask you to move first and second reading with respect to the bylaw package as amended. Are there any other bylaws anyone wishes removed from the package? If not, then you can proceed. When we get to dealing with 105 and 106, they can be dealt with at the same time, and then 112 can be dealt with separately, and at that point I'll hand the chair to Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that the bylaw package containing 101-2018 to declare lands as public highway, road widening, Part 1 on 59R-16144, Concession Road, Picard Peanuts Limited, and 102-2018 to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90 as amended, removal of holding provision 3905 West Main Street, Park Lane Home Builders Limited, Kathy Lentition, and 103-2018 to amend bylaw number 114-2016 to adopt a winter control plan for 2016 through 2020 sidewalk snow plowing, and 104-2018 to stop up and close and authorize the transfer of parts of the road allowance legally described as part of Crystal Beach Drive, Plan 410, Birdie, formerly Grace Avenue, being parts 1 and 3 on 30R-15236, 3859 Crystal Beach Drive, Troy and Tara Wilson, and 107-2018 to authorize applications for the cancellation, reduction, or refund of taxes levied for the years 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, and 108-2018 to authorize the entry into an agreement with the Corporation of the City of Niagara Falls for the provision of intermunicipal transit service, and 109-2018 to approve the final assessment levy for the Schooley Municipal Drain, and 110-2018 to assume secondary services in the Bryan Street development, part of Plan 492 and part of Plan 426, Plan 59R-11562, Dexter Developments Inc. / Sam Morabito, and 111-2018 to exempt certain lots in Plan 416 from part lot control, lots 3 and 4, 396 Ridgeway Road, William Arthur Cutler, be given first and second reading.
All those in favor? Favor? Okay, which one? So that is bylaw.
110-2018.
All right, so Madam Clerk, Councillor Zanko has a conflict to declare with respect to bylaw 112, and that is, for what reason? Because you live on the street. Okay, so that's being removed from the package as well, so we'll be dealing with that separately. So the amended bylaw package, first and second reading, all those in favor? We've taken that out, so you're in favor? Okay. So then we'll go to third and final reading. Councillor McDermott, you have that. So the bylaws out of the package, 105, 106, 110, did I say? And 112.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaws 101-2018, 102-2018, 103-2018, 104-2018, 107-2018, 108-2018, 109-2018, and 111-2018 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to those? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just the, maybe I missed something earlier at an earlier meeting, but bylaw 103, we're going to amend the bylaw to include all sidewalks. Did we amend the budget to
So there
this as
has
well,
been
or is that going to come later, or did we go?
There has been an incremental increase in the budget to take into account the latter part of this year, and that will have implications for next year unless the provincial government does something to roll back some of those obligations, and they were talking about that at AMO.
All right, has it been done to our budget for this year?
So for 2018, there's an incremental amount.
Okay,
contained in
all
the
right,
budget.
okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor then of the bylaw package as amended? That is carried. So Councillor Passero, we'll go back to you for bylaws 105 and 106, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that bylaws, we'll just do bylaws. That bylaws 105-2018 to assume secondary services in the Ridgeway by the Lake subdivision, formerly New Haven Estates, Phase 1, Plan 59M-341, Ridgeway Estates Limited, Robert Mills, and bylaw 106-2018 to assume secondary services in the Ridgeway by the Lake subdivision, formerly New Haven Estates, Phase 2, Plan 59M-372, Ridgeway Estates Limited, Robert Mills, be given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And that takes us then to Councillor McDermott for third and final reading for bylaws 105 and 106, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaws 105-2018, 106-2018 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to those? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Over the years, we've received phone calls for certain things that needed to be repaired, or things that were failing, for instance, street lighting and stuff. So we're going to assume these services, right? Are we also going to have them up to date so that there's no maintenance on our end that's required?
Mr. Walsh.
Is that part of it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We take them over in a new condition.
So if there are deficiencies that Councillor Luberts has referred to as an example, they will be rectified before we take over responsibility?
That's correct. We get a new subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'm sorry. Yeah, so actually the seconder for third and final reading is Councillor Nutt, not Councillor Butler, who has the conflict. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor of third and final reading of 105 and 106? That is carried. That then takes us back to first and second reading for bylaw 110. Councillor Passero.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Nuts, that bylaw 110-2018 to assume secondary services in the Bryan Street development, part of Plan 492 and part of Plan 426, Plan 59R-11562, Dexter Developments, Inc., Sam Morabito, is given first and second reading, sorry.
All those in favor? And opposed, that is carried. Third and final reading, Councillor McDermott.
Seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaw 110-2018 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Pissarro.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the items noted that's being transferred is driveway aprons. I know that there are still some concerns with residents who aren't 100% happy. How do we decide whether or not it becomes our issue, or do we assume it and still go after the contractor in certain areas, or is it just ours to deal with at the present time?
Mr. Walsh.
When a final inspection is done, if assumption is granted, it may come with conditions such as fix this driveway and replace that street lamp pole. So they're still noted and they're still on the developer's tab.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. So that takes us back then to bylaw number 112, and Councillor McDermott, I wonder if I could hand the chair to you. Councillor Pissarro would have the resolution for first and second reading, and you'll have to hand off the resolution for third and final reading.
Councillor Pissarro.
Thank you, Chair McDermott. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that bylaw 112-2018 to accept and declare lands as public highway, Thunder Bay Road, Centurion Building Corporation, Nicholas Culinary is given first and second reading.
Councillor Butler. Okay, all in favor?
No.
Nope, gotta do third and final reading. We're only halfway home.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that bylaws 112-2018 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, we have a resolution on the floor. Can the chair second the resolution? No? Then we need a seconder, another seconder? No, we just...
Councillor Luberts, do you want to sign it?
I'll sign, yeah, so I can second it. I just don't want to make the...
112. So it would be moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Luberts.
Okay, thank you. No, that's good. I just wanted to make sure that we get it right.
All those in favor? Carried.
This is... All right, thanks.
Okay, let's go to Councillor Luberts, are you organized now? You have resolution number 11, which is first and second reading of the confirmatory bylaw.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that bylaw number 113-2018 to confirm the actions of council at its meeting held on August 27th, 2018 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? Councillor Passero, you have third and final reading for that resolution.
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko. That bylaw number 113-2018 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Takes us to scheduling of meetings. We have an update with respect to Party on the Patio?
Okay. Yes, Your Worship. Party on the Patio is very quickly approaching. This is our rescheduled date of Saturday, September 8th, less than 2 weeks away. Tickets are available, not that many available, but some are available through eventbrite.ca by searching Party on the Patio on that website, or by contacting either myself, Councillor Zanko, or Councillor Butler. We have some tremendous entertainment that evening, a few surprises, some exciting announcements, and ending the evening with two great bands, Stone Groove and The Associates, who are much beloved by everybody all over at Niagara. So we're very much looking forward to it. Like I said, quickly approaching, which is why we're a little sweaty on our brows. So we have a little planning meeting after this, but if you don't have your tickets yet, just like the previous two, it's an event you won't want to miss. And thank you to my co-chairs, Councillor Zanko and Councillor Butler. I think His Worship just leaned over and purchased 5 tables.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Any other meetings that we need to inform the public about? If not, then surprisingly, Councillor Nutt, you have the final resolution.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that council adjourns at 8:06 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on September 10, 2018.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.